Hi, everybody. I'm Chris Preimesberger, editor of eWEEK. Thanks for joining us for this session of eWEEK eSpeaks. Our special guest today for an interview is Dillon Erb. He's the CEO and co-founder of Paperspace. Interesting name for a company. Welcome, Dillon.
Thanks for having me.
So it couldn't be digital space. It had to be Paperspace. Why did you call it? Why is it called Paperspace?
Oh man, yeah. So that's it's actually an old architecture kind of engineering term. You got model space and paper space, and it's an old word that kind of means your 2D viewport into your 3D world. So it stuck.
Okay,
The domain was available, so we're still
No, it's fine. It's very memorable. I like it. Tell me a little bit about your background before you started the company.
Yeah, so I met my co-founder Daniel in grad school. Actually, my degree is technically in building architecture, which is where the term Paperspace came from. But within that, I was working much closer to kind of the HPC kind of world. So working on a software platform that was doing kind of large-scale structural simulation. That led to an interest in kind of parallel compute and GPUs, and the last 5 years have been definitely an interesting time to be working in kind of the GPU space. So
Yeah.
that's where we got started, and have been doing this now for about 5 years.
My hat's off to anybody who can start a company. I mean, I had my own business for 7 years. Do you remember desktop publishing? I did that from home, and that was a small business. And even a small business is tough to get started. And for you to start a company like this is great. Tell me, Dillon, what is the business problem, the IT problem that Paperspace solves? I know it's an infrastructure as a service, or actually it's more of a platform of a service. Is that correct?
Yeah, so by way of a bit of background, so we really came into this space that we're in today, with a kind of an interest in GPUs and thinking about these new accelerators that were coming online and sort of what that would look like as it made its way into kind of new applications, and in particular into kind of cloud computing. The thing that changed, maybe 5 years ago, really was the shift from these devices being used primarily for kind of the visualization graphics pipeline into first-class data processing, compute devices. And so that, really tracked the rise of, or the emergence of machine learning, and in particular deep learning. And so today, where we're at is, building out tools that make it easier for organizations to actually leverage these devices and take advantage of, machine learning at sort of like an operational level. And it's an emerging space. Best practices are still emerging. The fundamental technology is still kind of changing underfoot. Every week there's a new framework or new accelerator. And so yeah, we work kind of at the intersection of machine learning and I would say like DevOps and infrastructure.
Yeah. From my perspective at eWEEK, we cover new software, new services, hardware, a large gamut of IT. And I'm seeing more and more inclusion of intelligence at different levels and different apps, even in the hardware, in chips. And this is a trend that is just going to keep growing for sure. Where does Paperspace fit into that? What else do you bring to the table? How does it work? How does a developer use this?
Yeah, so I think at a very high level, we're interested in kind of two things. One is moving machine learning, which can be extraordinarily complex, and it's a large ecosystem, from a technical skill into an organizational capability. And we kind of see this emergence of like a data-driven organization and migrating to sort of a model-driven organization. And so at the same time, there are a whole new class of kind of tools and frameworks available to developers, and the question is, how do you onboard every software engineer into this space? It's kind of like mobile websites were 15 years ago, or 10 years ago, which was you had your mobile team and then your regular kind of application team. And machine learning is kind of in that space as well, where it's primarily the domain of PhD researchers and statisticians and things like that. But the reality is this is a fundamentally transformative technology. And the question is, how do you actually get an ROI out of it? How do you get real results?
Mm-hmm.
And our belief is that you need, a tool that can interface these machine learning efforts with all of your other kind of software application development tools. So Gradient is the name of our kind of main product, and it's kind of in the category what we call ML ops, and a lot of other, it's kind of an emerging category. And the idea is, anyone can sign up on our website, and they don't have to deal with any of the infrastructure or the networking or anything else. They can kind of go directly into writing code that they can then, deploy as a kind of production-ready machine learning endpoint. So behind the scenes, there's a lot of orchestration that has to happen, but what we're trying to do is kind of bridge that gap between kind of the research domain of machine learning and then the kind of practical domain of software development.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can you offer just a high level use case example from
Yeah, definitely.
one of your customers to kind of paint a picture?
Yeah, so there's a company that we're working with right now that we've done it. We actually just put a case study out, a spinoff of Duke University, that's working in kind of computer vision, and in particular applying it to scans of lungs, which is of course super relevant today.
Yeah.
The issue is, even if you are, good at building out sort of these computer vision models, if you need to have a lot of people collaborate on them, or you want to take the kind of predictive model that comes out and then deploy it to, say, an edge device, you want to train this thing on a bunch of data, and it's able to give you good predictions as to this is cancer, this is not cancer, this is COVID or not COVID. Actually taking this model and then deploying it as a production ready service that integrates with all the existing tools you have, like CI/CD kind of terminology, or sort of like agile methodology, where everything is tracked in source control, and you're able to kind of take this model and deploy it. And so, machine learning is a little bit different even than kind of regular software development, which is not only do you have to deal with kind of these different environments. So, the most common machine learning accelerator is actually an iPhone. Most of the stuff is happening sort of at the edge. But you need massive amounts of compute to actually train these models. So spanning those different environments, being truly like a hybrid cloud kind of software tool stack is really essential to kind of taking this from R&D into production. I would say generally, the vast majority of our use cases probably fall under computer vision, because that ends up being sort of a really killer use case for deep learning and sort of parallel GPU compute. And I would say within that, the most common for us generally falls under kind of like health and life sciences, kind of medical applications.
So those are the hot verticals for you right now, or the ones that are closest to mind right now for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's the world right now is investing heavily in a lot of these, kind of biotech and things like that. And it's also the kind of area where, you zoom out, machine learning does really well when you have a lot of data and you want to process it and build out sort of an intelligent predictive model. So it ends up being kind of a nice fit. And so that's, we've also worked with everything from kind of robotics automation to fraud detection to cybersecurity applications, e-commerce.
Wow.
It's kind of a generic tool stack, but the idea is, can you go from building out a machine learning model, deploying that into a kind of production environment, and doing that cohesively in a way that gives visibility to all the stakeholders in an organization, allows you to collaborate, gives you sort of a reproducibility through every step of the pipeline, and that's what Gradient's all about.
Would you, do you guys deal mostly with CTOs or CIOs, or not? And how does a company know whether Paperspace would be a good tool for them?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think, it's actually shifting even today. We've seen sort of the emergence of like the head of AI or the head of ML who kind of works with the, the data component of an organization, maybe the CIO, maybe the CTO in a smaller organization. We've actually had most of our traction really from like a kind of developer first bottom up approach. We market directly to developers, anyone can sign up. And so that's usually our kind of entry point. And once they start hitting these, issues of scale, which is, you can do traditional data science on a Chromebook, but once you start getting into, more modern deep learning, you need, rigs of GPUs, and you got to connect them, and you're going to start hitting bottlenecks at every, part of that process. That's when they start looking to, to us or the big cloud providers. We're unique in that we actually run on all the cloud providers. So we work just as easily on AWS as we do on GCP. So, that's really the advantage of kind of having a truly hybrid cloud kind of cross-platform machine learning ops platforms.
Yeah, I'll bet you get a lot of business on Google Cloud because that's really where developers are doing a lot of their work, isn't it?
Yeah, I would say today it's definitely the lion's share goes to GCP and AWS. Azure has a lot of interesting kind of work going on there, and I think it's we'll see. I think our approach is, and actually just to include in that, we work just as well with kind of on-premise clusters, and that's a big consideration. I mean, when you're building out a machine learning model, it's usually you're interacting with very proprietary data, and the model ends up being a kind of core IP. So people are very protective of that. And then the other piece is this kind of concept of data gravity, which is that your compute and your tooling ultimately kind of migrate closer to wherever your data is. And organizations collect an enormous amount of data, and now they're like, how do we make this actionable or drive some real kind of bottom line insight from it?
And the data is going to keep piling up as we go on. It's not going to slow down anytime soon. So
absolutely,
we got to keep track of it. Dillon Erb, I want to thank you very much for your time today and joining us on eSpeaks.
Well, thanks for having me. Really appreciate it.
It's a great way to introduce you to a lot of our eWEEK readers. So thank you. Dillon Erb is CEO and co-founder of Paperspace. That's paperspace.com. Is that right? In case people need to get a hold of you.
Correct.
Easy to remember. Thanks, Dillon. And I want to thank everybody who's followed along on this today. Have a good rest of your eWEEK. Thanks for joining us on eWEEK eSpeaks. Go to eWEEK.com to hear more conversations with IT thought leaders.